What if Detroit Diesel's prized 8V71 was actually a ticking time bomb? Why did seasoned mechanics warn against starting it cold? Sure, the 8V71 is legendary for its brute power, but hidden beneath that thunderous roar are blown head gaskets and repair bills so high they would make a grown man cry. When Detroit Diesel introduced the Series 71 engines, they fundamentally changed what a diesel engine could do. At the heart of this family was a groundbreaking design, the two-stroke cycle, which set it apart from the more traditional four-stroke engines of the time. Unlike four-strokes, which rely on separate crankshaft revolutions for each part of the combustion cycle, the two-stroke in the 8V71 completed the entire process in just one revolution. It used every moment of its operation to create power, and that efficiency was transformative in an era where speed and compactness mattered just as much as reliability. The magic in its operation came from the inclusion of a roots-type blower, a component up front that ensured the engine delivered constant air pressure to the cylinders. This was the key to the two-stroke's high-revving, high-power nature. The blower wasn't just pushing air, it was practically shoving it directly into the cylinders, accommodating the rapid pace of fuel combustion. For anyone standing nearby, you'd hear more than just the roar of combustion. The whine of the blower working in sync with the engine became a signature sound. It was so loud and distinctive, people called it the Screaming Jimmy. That nickname stuck not just because of the noise, but because once a mechanic or operator heard it, they never forgot it. Another feature that made this engine a leap forward was its wet sleeve cylinder design. Instead of being directly built into the block like other engines, the 8V71 cylinders were independent, removable sleeves. Cooling water flowed around each sleeve to regulate temperatures, a trait that extended the life of the engine and eliminated the need to replace the entire block if one cylinder failed. Need a rebuild? Just pull the bad sleeves, swap in new ones, and you're ready to go. On a battlefield or bustling city depot, that kind of modularity wasn't just convenient, it could be the difference between downtime or staying operational when it mattered most. The engine thrived in dozens of settings. It powered buses, fire trucks, military vehicles, boats, and even equipment in industrial plants. The compact size of the 8V71 made it remarkably easy to squeeze into applications where space was limited. Fire engines used it to climb steep grades with full water tanks, while fishing vessels relied on its grit to hold up during punishing days on the water. For public transit buses, the power-to-weight ratio meant drivers could jump off the line quickly, keeping up with the demands of tight schedules, even in packed urban areas. It handled all of this while delivering consistent performance, making it an industry favorite. But living at the edge of what was mechanically possible came with trade-offs. Consider the engine's unit injectors, for example, a standout part of its design. These simplified the traditional fuel system by replacing cumbersome pumps and yards of fuel lines with injectors that did everything internally. Each cylinder had its own injector, delivering metered fuel directly into the combustion chamber. On paper, it eliminated complexity, but in practice, the injectors demanded precision. Even small variations in tuning could undo the engine's careful balance, creating poor performance or worse, premature wear. This blend of simplicity and complexity mirrored the engine's overall design. While the Roots blower and two-stroke cycle delivered incredible horsepower and efficiency, they also created an inherent fragility in the system. The same features that helped it thrive in high RPM environments were less forgiving during prolonged low-speed operation. Operators loved the engine's high-end power, but few understood how demanding the system was at maintaining it. If drivers pushed it too far into conditions it wasn't designed to handle, idling for hours or lugging loads at low speeds, the system's weakness would show. But before those weaknesses caught up to it, the 8V71 wasn't just outperforming expectations, it was redefining them. It symbolized everything Detroit Diesel stood for: innovation, adaptability, and raw power. In its heyday, no other diesel engine combined its power output with scalability. The versatility of building an engine family, inline 4, 6, and 8-cylinder setups from the same basic components, ensured applications from small delivery trucks to tugboats could benefit from its design. And yet, for all its glory, the engine's edge came with razor-thin margins. That blower, so crucial to its power, also generated excess heat. The injectors, though innovative, had little tolerance for mishandling. Every choice made in the engine's design hinged on operators and mechanics understanding its capabilities and its limits. That's where the cracks began to show, cracks that hinted the 8V71 wasn't indestructible, but rather teetering on a narrow ledge between performance and penalty. As its complexity grew more apparent, The marvel of the engine began to reveal the seeds of its eventual challenges. Its story didn't stop there, but already its Achilles heel was beginning to form. The 8V71 wasn't inherently flawed in its design, it simply required operators and mechanics to understand its limitations. Proper maintenance, like keeping cooling passages clear and ensuring high RPM operation, could have prevented so many of the failures it became known for. In fact, routine care wasn't just helpful, it was absolutely necessary for this engine to reach its full potential. Unfortunately, not all users had the expertise or patience to give it the attention it needed. Even small lapses in tuning or maintenance could have significant consequences. For example, Detroit Diesel's unit injectors were praised for their simplicity, but they demanded precise calibration. Off-the-shelf repairs or overlooked adjustments might pass unnoticed in some engines, but on the 8V71, they could spell disaster. Operators who pushed the engine too hard at low speeds or ignored temperature warnings only accelerated the cycle of wear and tear. Eventually, the very systems that made the 8V71 revolutionary, its blower, its two-stroke cycle, turned into liabilities. The payoff here lies in a lesson that applied not only to the 8V71, but to engineering at large. No amount of advanced technology can save an engine from misuse. Even a world-class design like this one needed care and understanding to keep it running at full strength. On paper, the 8V71 was a marvel of efficiency and power, capable of pushing machines to their limits. In practice, though, it revealed the dangers of technology pushed to the edge, without the room for error that real-world applications often demand. Without the right balance between design and use, even the strongest engine could burn itself out. The 8V71 earned a reputation as the engine you could rebuild faster than almost anything else. But this remarkable serviceability came with a dangerous drawback. Because the design made it so easy to swap major components or even entire engines, routine maintenance often took a back seat. Mechanics and operators leaned on the engine's modular design to keep their fleets running, focusing on quick fixes instead of preventative care. This trade-off, while seemingly harmless in the short term, paved the way for a cascade of failures that gave the 8V71 its mixed reputation. At the heart of the 8V71's convenience was its wet sleeve cylinder design. These individual, removable sleeves meant that mechanics didn't need to pull apart the entire engine to address a single failed cylinder. In fact, replacing a cylinder sleeve and piston could be done in a fraction of the time it took to work on most other engines. Stories from former Greyhound mechanics even claimed they could swap out an entire 8V71 engine in less than an hour. But this efficiency often encouraged a patch it and move on mindset. Instead of addressing underlying issues, many operators settled for band-aid repairs, which only delayed the bigger problems lurking under the surface. One of the biggest culprits behind the 8V71's struggles was heat, a side effect of its high revving, two-stroke nature. Keeping the engine cool was an uphill battle, and clogged coolant passages often turned this skirmish into a losing war. Oil leaks, another widespread issue, compounded these challenges. The phrase, "you didn't change the oil, you just kept adding it," became something of a running joke among operators. Leaks from valve cover gaskets, blower seals, and airbox drains were so common that it was easier to top off the oil than to fix the underlying problems. But ignoring the source of these leaks came with its own set of risks. Low oil pressure, caused by failed oil relief valves or accumulated leaks, led to poor lubrication, accelerating wear inside the engine. In extreme cases, it robbed the cooling system of the layer of lubrication necessary to keep components from overheating. The disassembly of an 8V71 by the team at Technomedia shines a light on just how dire things could get after years of neglect. Their 40-year-old engine was teeming with issues: clogged coolant hoses, center cylinder liners showing visible signs of extreme heat damage, and even part of the air filter that had been sucked into the intake system. The engine's oil pump shaft was also worn, reducing its effectiveness and worsening the lubrication problems. Individually, these problems might not have spelled doom, but together they painted a clear picture of what happens when basic care is ignored. Proper tuning played a crucial role in the performance of the 8V71, and that responsibility fell heavily on its unit injectors. While these injectors simplified the fuel delivery system by eliminating complex fuel pumps, they were highly sensitive to calibration. Overworked mechanics or inexperienced operators often overlooked these fine details, resulting in engines that either didn't run as efficiently or suffered long-term damage. Misunderstanding the 8V71's operational quirks caused further problems, especially when it was used outside its optimal range. For instance, Some operators believed the engine's immense power meant it could handle torque-heavy jobs just as well as a purpose-built four-stroke diesel. That wasn't the case. The high RPM design of the two-stroke meant it thrived on consistent operation at the higher end of the speed range. When farmers used the engine in tractors or forklifts, expecting it to idle for hours or pull heavy loads at low speeds, it failed. This kind of misuse caused rapid overheating, mechanical stress, and premature failure, adding to its reputation as unreliable when it was, in reality, deeply misunderstood. In fleet operations, the stakes were even higher. Municipal transit fleets using the 8V71 in buses often faced tight budgets and tight schedules, which prioritized keeping vehicles running over diligent maintenance. Ignoring small leaks or skipping routine coolant system flushes might save time in the short term, but the cost often came back tenfold when these issues snowballed into massive failures. Mechanics familiar with the 8V71 knew the engine would give as good as it got. If treated well, it could run strong for decades. Neglect it, and it would show no mercy. The 8V71's maintenance demands also stood in stark contrast to newer engines emerging by the late 1980s and early 1990s. As emissions regulations began tightening and modern engines incorporated electronic controls for better tuning and monitoring, the 8V71's mechanical simplicity became a liability. These new engines could adapt in ways the 8V71 simply couldn't, highlighting not just the need for constant upkeep, but also how quickly technology was outpacing it. Ultimately, maintenance wasn't just a task for the 8V71, it was a survival requirement. Operators who didn't respect this fact experienced the engine at its worst, but for those who understood its quirks and gave it the care it demanded, the 8V71 proved to be as fiercely dependable as it was powerful. The Detroit diesel 8V71 wasn't simply left behind by progress. It was pushed out by a wave of new regulations that reshaped the entire diesel engine industry. By the 1990s, environmental concerns were changing everything, and diesel engines were at the center of the conversation. The United States Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA, had begun introducing stricter emission standards aimed at reducing pollutants like nitrogen oxides, hydrocarbons, and particulate matter. The standards, which started with Tier 1 requirements in 1996, targeted older, high-emission engines directly. For the 8V71, with its roots in the 1930s and a design prioritizing power over emissions, it was the beginning of the end. The fundamental issue was simple. The 8V71's two-stroke cycle was never designed to handle emissions reduction. Unlike modern four-stroke engines, which burn fuel across two crankshaft revolutions, the two-stroke design of the 8V71 completed combustion in a single revolution. This created power, sure, but it also produced significantly more exhaust emissions. The technology that made the 8V71 efficient in its time simply couldn't meet the clean air requirements of the 1990s. Without mechanisms to reduce nitrogen oxides or trap particulate matter, it fell far behind the curve. However, among collectors and enthusiasts, the 8V71 found a second life. It's not hard to see why. For many, this engine represents the apex of pure mechanical diesel technology. It's an engine that roared, worked hard, and asked for nothing but good maintenance in return. Its modular design and rebuildability still impress those who work on it today, and its distinctive sound continues to captivate fans. Whether installed in a restored fire engine or roaring to life in a vintage boat, the 8V71 remains a reminder of what mechanical engineering could achieve without the aid of computers or electronics. Ultimately, regulations may have pushed the 8V71 out of the mainstream, but they couldn't erase its legacy. Its combination of power, modularity, and simplicity solidified its place in diesel history. While it was a product of its time, it continues to command respect from those who understand just how far ahead of its era it truly was. Its challenges didn't overshadow its accomplishments. They're part of the story, a testament to what happens when innovation meets the realities of an evolving world. Even if its roar has faded from the highways, its reputation as a diesel legend remains untouchable. The Detroit Diesel 8V71 wasn't just an engine, it was a bold statement of engineering possibility. Its two-stroke design, modular construction, and relentless power defined an era of diesel innovation, but it came at a cost. Pushing the limits of technology left it unable to adapt when regulations and real-world demands changed. For enthusiasts, though, the 8V71 remains more than a relic. It symbolizes a time when engines were raw, mechanical, and unapologetically aggressive. If you've ever heard the unmistakable scream of a Jimmy ripping through the air, you've witnessed a piece of history, one that still commands respect today.